Good afternoon to all. I, on behalf of the BBD Bar Professional Association and VIP Road Chartered Accountant Association, welcome you all in this Jnana Satra on the audit trail and audit maturity model. Before we have the formal session, we will have Saraswati Vandana. Ya Kundendu Dasharaha Dhavala Ya Supravastraprita Ya Veena Varadanda Manditkara Ya Sveta Patmasana Ya Brahma Chita Sankara Pravitavira Devai Sada Vandita Samambat Saraswati Bhagavati Nissesa Jatyapaha. Friends, the two professional associations jointly has organized this webinar, and the audit trail we feel in the field of audit has really created a lot of controversies, queries, misgivings, misunderstandings, and particularly when we want to finalize the final statement of books of accounts, how far the entries regarding closing, depreciation, provision for taxations, and others in course of our checkings is normally detected in our course of our audits has to be dealt with. And there are certain journal entries which we require to pass it towards the year end, how it has to be accounted for. Our Mr. Pramod Mundra ji has framed certain queries which has already been sent to our learned speaker. And we have today very learned speaker, Dosi ji. He is the man instrumental we call the Brahma, the Sijan Karta, who framed the guidance note on the audit trail. So with these words, because I don't want to waste a lot of times on that, and we want to have more and more from him, and then interactive way of our queries resolutions from the learned speaker. With these words, I hand over the proceedings to Mr. Mundra. Pramod.
Now I request Anil Anchalia to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mundraji. So today we are covering two topics, basically audit trail and audit quality maturity models. Both are applicable from 1st April 2023. So what is audit trail? Audit trail are a chronological record of changes that have been made to the data. Any change to data, including creating new data, updating or deleting data, must be recorded. And audit trail is based on triple W approach. When, who, what. When the changes have been made, that is date and time, who made those changes, user ID, and what data was changed, that is transaction reference. And it is applicable to all companies registered under Companies Act, including foreign companies. Not applicable to a LLP or partnership firm or sole proprietorship firm. It is not applicable to them. And the second topic is audit quality maturity model. Again, it is applicable from 1st April 2023. The mandate covers firm auditing a listed company, banks other than cooperative banks, insurance companies. However, those firms which are conducting only branch audit of bank are excluded from this mandate. And what is audit quality maturity model? It's an amalgamation of a well-researched set of audit quality indicators. It is a cross-functional evaluation model covering key areas of not only audit engagements, but also audit practice at the firm's level. It includes operation of the firm, that is revenue budgeting and pricing, audit practice manual, budgeting of engagement, timesheets, etc. The model has been developed after deep international research on system to enhance audit quality and after widespread outreach activities conducted across India. It is basically structured into three sections, namely practice management, that is operation, human resource management, and practice management, that is strategic or functional, with a total score of 600 points. Based on the scores obtained under each of the sections, the firm shall arrive at a level ranging from level 1 to level 4. While level 1 depicts that the firm is very nascent, level 4 indicates that the firm has significant adoption of standards and procedures. Accordingly, all firms must strive to achieve level 4 under AQMM. With these words, I would like to request CA Har Sudesi to introduce today's speaker, CA Vishal Doshi. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome you to this webinar. It is my pleasure to introduce our chief guest, Vishal Doshi sir, who has graciously accepted our invitation to join us today. Vishal sir is a highly accomplished individual in the field of audit and assurance functions. Vishal Doshi sir is a BCom graduate, fellow member of a chartered accountancy. He is also qualified DISA and DIRM. Vishal Doshi sir is a Central Council member of ICI for the term 22 to 25. Sir leads the audit and assurance practice of KC Mehta and Company LLP, Chartered Accountants, Vadodara. He has more than 25 years of professional experience. Sir looks after the assurance functions of listed companies, government companies, multinational companies, and large corporates. He also specializes in conversions from Indian GAAP to Ind AS or IFRS and has successfully led some very prestigious Ind AS implementation and coverage projects in oil and gas, power, infrastructure, and manufacturing sectors. Sir is the chairman of Board of Studies, Academic, Vice Chairman of Auditing and Assurance Standards Board, and convener of Center for Audit Quality Directorate, and also member of various non-standing committees of ICI for the year 23-24. Sir has been a member of WIRC for 2019 to 22 and also Vice Chairman of WIRC of ICI for 2021. He has been the Chairman of Baroda branch of WIRC of ICI for the year 2005-2006. Sir has made presentation on Ind AS, IFRS, accounting standards, standards on auditing, ICI guidance note, code of ethics, practice management for SMPs, AS versus ICDS, etc. He has been visiting faculty to postgraduate course at MS University, Baroda. Sir has been also a peer reviewer for peer review board ICAI. He has been a technical evaluator of financial statements for ICI awards for excellence in financial reporting for research committee ICAI and member of financial reporting review group Baroda for financial reporting review board ICAI. Sir has also been awarded with the Rashtrapati Scout Award by Sri K.R. Narayanan, Honorable President of India. Presently, he is appointed as an expert member on the Board of Studies in Accounting and Financial Management, Faculty of Commerce for the term 22-23 by the Maharaja Sayaji Rao University of Baroda. As this program promises to deal with a host of issues relating to audit trail and audit quality maturity model, I am sure this will help in capacity building and provide window for the practitioners of audit and financial reporting and financial managers to carry out their work in a better manner. I am looking forward for an enlightening and purposeful deliberation and discussion in this program. I welcome you all once again. Over the proceedings to Mundraji.
Thank you. Now it's a turn of Vishal Doshi sir to deliberate on the topic. And we have framed some questions. Part of these has been provided to Vishal Doshi to include in each deliberation. And whatever left, we will be inviting the queries from the floor at the end of each session. And I have some more queries which I will be raising at the end of the first session of the audit trail. And thereafter, we will deliberate on audit quality maturity model. Now over to Doshi sir.
Thank you, Mundraji. Very, very good evening to all the participants. I would like to thank Rajendraji, Parilji and Harji for their opening remarks and a very kind introduction for this event that is hosted jointly by the BPD Bagh Professional Association, jointly with the VIP Road CA Association. And I'm happy that I'm part of this session. In fact, Pramod Bhai has been chasing me since the last couple of months. I will be very honest on that, but because of the extensive traveling and certain responsibilities at the council, I was not able to commit the time because normally I am a person that once I give a commitment, I would not like to deter from it, and last minute changes do happen. Well, friends, the topic for discussion today on the audit trail, a very important change that has been notified And I would say as professionals, so I would say first I would like to give a disclaimer that though I'm a council member and also the vice chairman of the AASB and convener for the CAQD, but whatever views today I would be expressing, they would be my personal views and not that of the institute or any of the committees or of the council. And so kindly bear this in mind when we will be deliberating and discussing the things in detail. So friends, this audit trail is something which is extremely important from a governance perspective with respect to the companies per se. As we are all aware that this was notified a couple of years back and it had been extended a couple of occasions thereafter. And finally, it has seen the light of the day, I would say, with effect from 1st April 23. And we are expected now to report on the requirements for the financial year 23-24 onwards. So I'll just share my screen. Yeah. So what I'll do is, like it was mentioned, that the implementation guide has been announced. It has been released by the AASB of the ICI. And so what we will do is, and when we are discussing on the audit trail, we'll go through the implementation guide itself. So this would basically cover not only the statutory provisions relating to audit trail, but also on the responsibilities of the management as well as the auditors and the reporting requirements. So friend, just to give some background about what an audit trail is, typically it is like an edit log. So it is a visible trail of evidence enabling one to trace information that is contained in a statement or report back in the original input source. So audit trails is their chronological record of the changes that have been made to the data. So there is a data, and then there are changes which are being done with respect to editing any entries or deleting any entries. So these are the changes that would get recorded in a systematic manner. And any change to data, including creating new data, updating and deleting, that must be recorded. So this is what is typically an audit trail. And when we talk of accounting software, what is an accounting software? It is a computer program or system that enables recording, maintenance, and reporting of books of account and the relevant ecosystem applicable to business requirements. So these accounting softwares, they would differ from product to product, and we ourselves have seen experience that there will be different vendors giving the accounting software with different features and compatibility and all those things. And there might be multiple softwares also which might be integrated, or API based merger would be happening of data, consolidation of data. So all these would be typically coming under the ambit of accounting softwares. And a very important definition is with respect to the books of account, which is defined under section 2, subsection 13 of the Companies Act. Because when we talk of maintenance of books of account, it's the definition which would be very important. And this includes, so it is an inclusive definition that has been given. There are records that are maintained in respect of all sums of money received and expended by a company, and matters in relation to which the receipts and expenditure take place, the sales and purchases of goods, services, the assets and liabilities, and the items of cost that may be prescribed under 148 in case a company belongs to any such class of companies that is defined. So typically,
डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ये स्लाइड आनी नहीं यहाँ पर चेंज नहीं हो पा रही है.
एक मिनट, because I am already on slide 3. आपको क्या फर्स्ट स्लाइड ही दिख रहा है?
हाँ, खाली फर्स्ट स्लाइड ही दिख रही है.
एक मिनट. चेंज हो रहा है अभी प्रमोद जी?
No, सिर्फ first slide ही आ रही है अभी भी.
अरे यार. I'll just log out once and log in again. Just give me a
Okay.
minute.
Okay.
इधर आ वहाँ कपड़ा आयरन करके रखा था मुझे भाभी का ये तो इसे से निकाल क्या है
आयरन उसको कहा किया ये तो धो के वहां सुखा दिया था तो शाम भूल गया तो उसको उतार के वहीं रख दिया
आयरन में नहीं ले गया
नहीं
वाह
अब कार्य करेगा कल तो शाम में उतार
और
के
उसको जगह
रखा।
पे रखना चाहिए ना इसलिए मुझे अंदर रखा भाभी का कमरा तो ये गंदा से दिखा
नहीं उसको नहीं किया
तभी हम यहाँ रखा लो देखो पीपी शुगर एकदम ठीक वही है नॉर्मल की संगत
ये विपाशा ईयरफोन है क्या करोगे इतना स्टैंडर्ड का
So now it is coming.
Now we started.
Second slide is fine.
ऑफिस में था ना तो पॉड वाला भी गायब ऑफिस से अपने जो थे आगे
अभी दिख रहा है प्रमोद जी?
हाँ दिख रहा सर.
Okay. Yeah, so in fact, I would look at this as an example for Audit Trail that, when we talk of this, I would say the difficulty or all that we faced in this last couple of minutes. Now, if my laptop starts recording things that how many times did I log off my PowerPoint, I again restarted it, I again logged into Zoom. So this would be typically what an audit trail would show when we would generate a report. So I think this was a live example that we can say with respect to an audit trail. So friends, continuing the presentation further, what are the requirements as far as auditors, or I would say since all of us here are auditors, what are the requirements that are applicable to us? So typically the section 143(3), it requires the additional reporting requirements with respect to the auditors, and these are also covered under the company's audit and auditors rules, the rule 11 to be more specific. And now this audit trail has been inserted as rule 11G in the audit and auditors rule. And it was notified in 2021, like I said, a couple of years back, but it had been extended by a year as far as the audit rules are concerned. Now, what exactly is the requirement when we talk of the audit rules or the requirement for the auditors? So as auditors, we need to report that the company has complied with such accounting software or used such accounting software for maintaining its books of account, where one, there is a feature of recording audit trail or typically the edit log facility that we would say. Second, it has been operated throughout the year for all the transactions that have been recorded in the software. It has not been tampered with. That means the audit trail feature has not been tampered with, and the audit trail that has been preserved by the company as far as the statutory requirement for record retention is concerned. So these are the requirements that we need to report on, and this would typically be with effect from 1st April 23 and onwards. So, friends, like I said, that March 21 was when this was notified first. It was applicable from immediately, And then the applicability was deferred by 1 year, that is commencing on 1st April 22 by the MCA. So typically under the audit rules, I would say the applicability is from 1/4/22. Now we'll see, because there was an anomaly in that, and how that can be overcome. In fact, the implementation guide talks about that also. So when it comes to the company, because ultimately as auditors, we can report on an audit trail on a software if it is maintained by the company, right? So there was a similar amendment, or I would say an addition in the rules, the company's account rules, 2014. At the same time, when the first time the auditors rules were amended, and this requirement of maintaining such a software was incorporated in 2021, which was deferred to 1/4/22, and thereafter this was deferred to 1/4/23. That means as far as the account rules are concerned, the applicability is from 1/4/23, but as far as the audit and auditors rules is concerned, it is applicable from 1/4/2022. So we'll see going forward how this affects, and whether for March 22 year closing for companies, whether we need to report, or what and how we need to report. Now we have seen what actually constitutes the books of account. We have discussed the definition under section 2 subsection 13 of the Companies Act, and it would cover all these aspects with respect to the assets, liabilities, purchase, sales, money received and expended, and also in terms of the cost records that the company needs to maintain. Now any software which maintains, or I would say records, that fall these books of account, or the transactions with respect to the books of account, they would fall under the definition of the books of account. So now let us say, many times we have seen that there is a point of sale software, especially in case of the retail companies and all, that there is a point of sale software. Now that sales is what gets recorded as sales in my books of account. Now, because sales in the books of account definition, it contains the sales, recording of sales. Therefore, this POS software should also be would also be my books of account. And if these are recorded, so you have this POS where the daily or each transaction is getting recorded, the invoices are being generated and handed over to the customers, and on a consolidated basis, the monthly entries is what gets posted, or a weekly basis, or on a daily basis, but not on an invoice to invoice basis also in the general ledger. Then this POS software would also be required to have the audit trail, since the sales invoices would get covered under the books of account. Right, so that is the impact. So similarly, we can say with respect to the inventory records, because they are ultimately assets of the company, with respect to the FA register, because they are also assets of the company. So in whatever software or wherever they are mentioned, however they are maintained, I would say, because they come under the purview, under the definition of the books of account, they would be required to be maintained. If they are in a software, then the software should have the audit trail feature. Now, the other side, which records do not need an audit trail. We have seen that all digital records would need an audit trail. So since this talks about companies which maintains the records in electronic form by using an accounting software is required, as a reverse, that those books of account which are maintained manually, typically that they would not be covered under this rule of maintaining the audit trail, because it's only for the electronic maintenance of records that the audit trail has been prescribed. But at the same time, because there is a mandatory reporting requirement under 11G for the auditors on this factual statement of facts, if there is any company which maintains manual books of account, and that has to be brought about while reporting under Rule 11G. Now, like we said, that under the account rules, the first responsibility is that of the management. So when we consider that, what are the responsibilities that the management has? So the account rules, they specify that the accounting software should be only such software which should have records of the audit trail of each and every transaction, creating an edit log of each change that is maintained in the books, along with the date when such changes were made, and also ensuring that the audit trail is not disabled. Right, so this is the software requirements that the management has to take responsibility. I would say the primary responsibility is that of the management to ensure that while they select the appropriate accounting software, these compliances are there. So one is that the audit log that cannot be disabled. Once it has been the login happens, it has to remain enabled. The audit trail of each and every transaction should be recorded, and the log should get created for each and every change that is being made in the books of account. So there may be different ways in which accounting softwares can be used. So you can have the accounting softwares which are maintained in India. There are softwares which may be maintained outside India, hosted on some server outside India. It may be on premise, that is at the physical premise of where your client is operating from or maintaining the books of account. It may be on a cloud. And now we also have this SaaS, that software as a service, where the software is again online, and it is a service provider which gives the software, and everything is maintained at the service provider's end. So it is a software as a service. So these are different modes in which the accounting software would be used by the client. And many times there can be a separate service organization which would be maintain books of account, like a payroll. We have seen many outsourcing being done, especially in case of the large company to payroll. Now, in such cases also, that those service organizations where the payroll has been outsourced, that payroll typically being books of account, like we said, because it does the recording of the expenses as well as the liabilities with respect to employees. Though it is in a shared service center, but it would have also used the software where, so it becomes the management responsibility to ensure that these softwares also have the audit trail. Coming to the responsibilities of the auditor, like we discussed earlier, that we are required to report on the audit trail by making a specific assertion in under the report on other legal and regulatory requirements. So you also need to understand where this need to be placed when we talk of a report under the companies, under the report on other legal and regulatory requirements. And what are we expected to verify? Because ultimately our report would be post verification of certain aspects, or which I would say as a part of our audit process on the audit trail. So first is whether the audit trail feature is configurable. That means whether you can disable or tamper with it. By you, I mean the management or anybody in the company. Whether the audit trail feature that was enabled or operated throughout the year. So with effect from 1st April 23, this has been made applicable. So whether it was there throughout the year or not, whether all the transactions recorded in the software are covered in the audit trail feature, and whether the audit trail preserved as per the statutory requirement for record retention. So these are the requirements of our reporting. And our report, when we talk under the report on other legal and regulatory requirements, it should give assertions with respect to these items. So any software, like we discussed, used to maintain books of account will be covered within the ambit of the of this particular rule. And any software that maintains or records or transactions that fall under the books of account definition will be considered. So like we discussed about payroll, we discussed about the POS, the sales, we discussed about fixed assets or the property, plant, equipment, or I would say the FA register. So all these things would get covered under the books of account. Now we also need to see what is the interplay between the account rules and the audit rules. So like we said, the account rules are what are prescribed for the companies, and rules are what are prescribed for the auditors. And there was an amendment that was made in 2021 simultaneously in both, but thereafter that simultaneous amendment were not carried out. The first year extension was carried out for both, but the second year extension was carried out only in the account rules. So when we talk about the requirement of the accounting software having the audit trail feature, it has been prescribed only in context of account, right? So this is evidenced by the fact that as per the proviso to the rule, accounting software should be capable of creating an edit log of each and every change made in the books of account. So it is specifically, it is limited to the books of account only. Now, 11G, that is the auditor's rule, that requires auditors to comment whether the company has used such software for maintaining its books of account, which has a feature of the recording audit trail and all what we discussed. So which means that the companies are required to maintain the audit trail for each change that is made in the books of account. And therefore, and on that basis, as an auditors, all the transactions which are recorded in the software, they would refer to all transactions that result in the change made in the books of account. So we have discussed a lot about the definition with respect to the books of account, which provides for the management responsibility that it is their responsibility to maintain the books of account or other relevant papers maintained in the electronic mode. And so maintenance is the requirement, responsibility of the management. This we should make it very, very clear for us. And as an auditor, we are expected to check, verify, assess whether the audit trail is enabled for such transactions which result in a change to the books of account. That is our responsibility. The primary responsibility is that of the management. Now coming to the applicability, friends, where I mentioned that there is a gap between the account rules and the audit rules. Its applicability typically is from 1st April 2023. So there is a likely scenario that in financial year 22-23, that is from 1/4/22 to 31/3/23, there is in the absence of compliance requirement to companies. So companies have not been mandated for the financial year 22-23, whereas under 11G, the auditors are required to report. Now, this is something which is very evident that what the company is not mandated to maintain. As an auditor, we cannot verify and report on that. And therefore, the auditors will need to mention, and I'll show you that in the implementation guide, we have given a reporting language that for financial year ended 31st March 23, how we can report where the company has not maintained, and because it was not mandatory for the company to maintain such audit trail feature, or I would say a software which has the audit trail feature. So it was also mentioned in the opening remarks that these are applicable to all companies, including the Section 8 companies and the foreign companies defined under Section 2, subsection 42 of the Companies Act. I'll not go into that details, but at least it is applicable for all companies, including the Section 8 companies. So where the books of accounts are entirely maintained manually, 11G would not be applicable because that is only for applicable to those maintaining books in the electronic form. It is applicable to the standalone as well as the consolidated financial statements. So if you have any client where CFS is also required, then this 11G reporting would be applicable in case of CFS also. In case of CFS, again, the principal auditor should apply professional judgment and comply with the applicable standards on auditing, that is especially the SS 600, using the work of another auditor, because the subsidiaries books of account would be audited by some other auditor, if other auditor, and where they would have reported on the 11G requirements in their audit at the consolidated level. You will have to take cognizance of their reporting and also the SS 600 while assessing matters that are reported by the auditors of company components that are Indian components. So we need to see there is a difference. One is a foreign company, and that second is a foreign component when it comes to the consolidated financial statements. So like I said, foreign company is something which is defined in 242 of the Companies Act, whereas a foreign component would be a company which is incorporated outside India and it does not have any office or agent or principal place of business in India, like a company having subsidiary outside India, that would be a foreign component. And since these rules, the company's account rules and the company's audit and auditors rules are not applicable to those companies, foreign components, for in their auditor's report, there would be no such mention of this. And therefore, as far as CFS is concerned, it would be only applicable only to the Indian components within the group. Now, we also mentioned that our reporting responsibility under 11G is whether the audit trail has been preserved for the retention period mentioned under the Act, I would say. So that is a period of 8 years, what has been specified under section 128(5) of the Act. The books of account are to be preserved by companies for a minimum period of 8 years. And we need to check that also, that they will have to retain the audit trail for a minimum period of 8 years, effective from the date of applicability of these rules, that is from 1/4/23 onwards. Right. So for 23/24, it would be the first year. And the retention, so we did not go back 8 years and check whether that they have retained that audit trail or not, because this is applicable from this year only, and we will have to report that going forward on a prospective basis. As far as the audit approach is concerned, friends, what is the responsibility that we need to take? So first is that we have to ensure that the management assumes their primary responsibility. Like I have been repeatedly saying that it is first the management which has to ensure, and as an auditor we need to check that the management has assumed their responsibility. One is that the management should identify records and transactions that constitute the books of account under 213 of the Act. So, right. So first, the management would have to discuss and also share with you that where are the all the softwares where the books of account are maintained. Second is identifying the accounting softwares that are used for the creation and maintenance of the books of account. Ensure that such softwares have an audit trail feature. Also ensure that the audit trail, it captures changes to each and every transaction, and then that the audit trail feature is enabled. So these are some of the risks that the management has to assume. They would also have to ensure, the management has to ensure that the audit trail is enabled at the database level, right, for logging any direct data changes. So typically direct data changes should get captured as part of the audit trail or the edit log, and to ensure that the audit trail is appropriately protected from any modification. Right. So you can make changes to the entries and all that gets captured to the edit log or the audit trail. But again, the audit trail that should not be modifiable. Right. So once it gets captured, the change in the transactions gets recorded, there should not be any modification made to that. Also, to ensure that the audit trail is retained as per the statutory requirement that we said is a period of 8 years. And the management should ensure that controls over the maintenance and monitoring of the audit trail and its feature are designed and operating effectively throughout the period of reporting. Right. So again, the internal controls on the audit trail is also what the management should ensure with respect to the effective maintenance and monitoring of the audit trail. Now, when we are talking about the internal controls with respect to audit trail, what can be the specific internal controls? Right. So in order to demonstrate that the audit trail feature that was functional, operated, and not disabled, there are some of these internal controls. The company will have to design and implement those specific internal controls. For example, controls one, to ensure that audit trail feature has not been disabled or deactivated. So there has to be controls that have to be designed to ensure that. Also, with respect to the user ID and password, that is, each individual has been assigned a user ID and they are not shared. Controls also to ensure that changes to the configuration of the audit trail are authorized and logs of such changes are made. So to the audit trail, if there are any changes that are required, then that has to be recorded again, and it cannot be any unauthorized access or unauthorized changes that is made to the audit trail. Controls to ensure that the access to audit trail. Now, so your audit trail, the edit log would get recorded, would get stored somewhere at the client's server or cloud or wherever it might be on the machine. Now, that audit trail and also the backup of the audit trail, the access to that, it should be disabled or it should be restricted to certain personnel only. And wherever such restricted access has been given to the audit trail, in such a case, the records of the access, or what we say as the access logs, that should be maintained, and whenever required or whenever the audit trails have been accessed, that should get recorded. And as auditors, we need to also monitor these access logs in case there are any access features that are available to the audit trail and or their backups. And finally, the controls to ensure that periodic backups of the audit trails are taken and archived as per the statutory record of 8 years. So like audit trail, the backup regularly, because they have to maintain for 8 years. And we also have to report for 8 years that the audit trail have been retained, the log has been retained, and therefore it is important for the companies to ensure that the backups of these audit trail records are also taken regularly. Now, what are the identification of the relevant transaction as per the auditor that we need to do? So one, like we also we discussed that we might the following procedures we would need to do. One is the management's identification of the records and transactions where audit trail needs to be captured and verify on a test basis. As an auditor, these are the audit procedures that we would verify whether the audit trail has been configured and enabled in the identify accounting software. So like we said, there for different features, there can be different softwares. There can be third-party service providers also whose softwares also for which we might need to do this test of controls. Also to evaluate the management's approach regarding the identification of accounting software, which have been considered for the purpose. So where we said earlier that there are certain management responsibilities which are there, which they have to assume first. Now, as an audit procedure, we need to first assess that those responsibilities which were of the management, whether they have assumed, and that would form the first part of our verification with respect to the audit trail, or I would say the audit approach overall. And also to inquire with the management on how they evaluated changes required for the maintenance of audit trail as part of changes or upgrades to the accounting software. So let us say till last year, the managements were using certain software where this audit trail feature was not mandatory, and therefore they may not have maintained it also. Now, with effect from 1st April 23, they would have changed the software or upgraded the software, and therefore, as auditors, we also need to have our inquiries with the management as to how they have made these changes to satisfy the requirement now that is required under these provisions. And where required, many times, we might not ourselves be experts on certain aspects with respect to the softwares and the technology part. So where applicable, we may consider involvement of specialist or expert in the field of IT to assist in evaluation of the management controls. Now, we were talking about software being provided by some other, and definitely in most of the cases, the software would be provided by service providers. In that case, there is a standard so for service organizations, SAE 3402, which requires an auditor's auditors with respect to assurance reports on controls at a service organization. Right. So for compliance of the audit trail requirements, we might need to bring in this particular standard SAE 3402. And also it is expected that the management ensures that the administrative access to the audit trail is restricted to the authorized representative. So even in the service organization also, all the checks and balances which we discussed earlier applicable to as if the software is maintained at your client place, similar things should be there as far as the service organizations is concerned. Now, with respect to software, what would be the approach of the auditor? So these are some of the procedures which the auditor would need to apply for the purpose of reporting. First is with respect to the configuration that the software, the enabling or disabling of the audit trail and whether audit trail was enabled throughout the period. So first, like we discussed that typically the audit trail or the edit log should not be disabled, or it should not have a feature of disabling in the first instance itself. And if by any chance you find that there is a feature of disabling, then you have to see that whether the audit trail feature had been disabled, or I would say the other way around, was enabled throughout the period. Also, who has the access to such configurations with respect to the enabling or disabling, if at all that feature is there. Typically, the regulations require that there should not be such feature of disabling the Audit Trail software. So that is the responsibility given on the management, that the software should not have any disabling feature. Any changes to the Audit Trail configuration during the period of audit, and this would be also covering under the events occurring after balance sheet date. So during the financial year and also from the date of financial statements, but before the date of the auditor's report. We have to see, because many of the entries, many of the transactions pertaining to the closing entries would be forming part of a date post 31st of March. Typically, we would not have any scenario where all the entries are passed on 31st of March to close the books of account. And therefore, it becomes important for us that till the date of our report, till we sign off, we need to examine that whether the audit trail feature and also the edit log pertaining to transactions of the previous financial year. Periodic review mechanism implemented and operated by the management for any changes to the audit trail configuration, completeness and accuracy of audit trail or the edit logs that are generated through the software functionalities or directly recorded in the underlying database. And testing management has performed to assess completeness and accuracy. So what testing management has done to ensure the completeness and accuracy of the audit trail. So these are some of the audit related features. So that was with respect to the accounting software. Now coming to the audit trail, the preservation, like we said, it has to be maintained for a period of 8 years. So one, what are the procedures that have been implemented by the management? We need to understand that, and also review on a sample basis the audit trail records maintained by management for each applicable year. Now, when we talk of IFC, internal financial control, which requires, so that at the end of the year, we need to check with respect to the IFC that whether the controls were in existence at the end of the year. So if there were any deviations during the year which have been rectified by the end of the year, then that typically under IFC we do not report. But as compared to that, when we talk of Rule 11G or this audit trail, it is important, we need to report that this audit trail facility has operated throughout the year for all transactions recorded in the accounting software. So we have to examine that it is for a full 365 days, the full year, that this audit trail feature has to be activated and operating effectively. So we also need to evaluate implications, specifically giving due consideration SA 250 with respect to the consideration of laws and regulation in an audit of financial statements. So now some of the scenarios, what may be expected now going forward, that management may maintain adequate audit trail as required by the account rules. So that is the perfect situation. Second is that the management may not have identified all records or transactions for which audit trail should be maintained. And third is the accounting software does not have the feature to maintain audit trail, or even if it had the feature, it was not operated throughout the year. So these can be the typical different situations which we would come across not only for FY 23-24, but even going forward maybe. So typically, scenarios 2 and 3, that is where the management has not identified all record transaction for which audit trail should be maintained, or the feature to maintain audit trail, either it was not there or it was not enabled throughout the audit period. In such situations, under 11G, you will have to give a modified or an adverse reporting. That means, in your opinion, it has to be modified or adverse. We'll see the language going forward. There are some illustrative, I would say, examples that is given. And so in respect of FY 22-23, so where we were talking about that, where in the account rules, the effective date is 1st April 23, whereas in the audit rules, the effective date is 1st April 22. But as an auditor, we cannot report on something which has not been mandated on the management. And therefore, an illustrative reporting has been given in the implementation guide, which would be applicable typically only for 31st March 23 year end, where what is illustrated is that as proviso to Rule 3.1 of the company's accounts rules 2014 is applicable for the company only with effect from 1/4/23. Reporting under this clause is not applicable. So under 11G in the auditor's report, this can be given for the year ending 31st March 23. This is an example of an unmodified reporting, or I would say a clean report. And if you see, we had mentioned that there are different requirements that are given under 11G. So if we see this example, based on our examination, which included test checks, the company has used an accounting software for maintaining its books of accounts. So that is the first requirement. Second, which has a feature of recording audit trail edit log facility. That is the second requirement. The same has operated throughout the year for all the, so that is the third requirement throughout the year. And fourth is for all relevant transactions recorded in the software. Further, during the course of audit, so these are with respect to the reporting requirements under 11G. And then the opinion that further during the course of our audit, we did not come across any instance of the audit trail feature being tampered with. Additionally, the audit trail has been preserved by the company as per the statutory requirements for record retention. So this is the fifth requirement. So if you see in this example, this illustrative 2 paragraphs, all the requirements of Rule 11G are covered. And this is with respect to an unmodified reporting. On this, that was on the standalone. Now we may see a illustrative reporting for the consolidated financial statements and unmodified reporting again. So based on our examination, which included test checks and that performed by the respective auditors of the subsidiaries, associates, and joint ventures, joint operations, which are companies incorporated in India. So here as an auditor, you are very specifically saying that these are companies which are incorporated in India, whose financial statements have been audited under the Act. The company, subsidiaries, associates, and joint ventures, joint operations have used an accounting software for maintaining its books of account, which has a feature of recording audit trail and all those things, and including the assertion that during the course of our audit, we did not come across any instance of audit trail feature being tampered with, and it has been preserved by the company as per the statutory requirements. So this is a typical reporting that you can have with respect to consolidated financial statements, which is an unmodified reporting. Now coming to a modified reporting. Again, this is an example taken for the CFS, consolidated finance. So if you see that the words that are in bold, except for the instances mentioned below. So, there would be certain instances where the audit trail has not been maintained, or there are some variations with respect to the requirements of which are there for our reporting. And so this would be a case of a modified reporting where you are saying, and you will also have to list out the instances where there is a default. Now some illustrative wording again for a modified reporting. So what can be the nature of exception? So there are a few exceptions that have been identified and against which the relative language, again illustrative, has been given. So the first exception is where the audit trail feature was disabled for one of the books of account or records, or for an accounting software, example, fixed asset software that did not have an audit trail. So typically, where the fixed assets register is being maintained in Excel or in some other form, which is there, but which does not have an audit trail. So the illustrative wordings would be that based on our examination, the company has used accounting software for maintaining its books of account, which has a feature of this, except in respect of maintenance of fixed assets records, where the accounting software did not have the audit trail feature enabled throughout the year. Further, the audit trail facility has been operating throughout the year for all relevant transactions recorded in the software, except for the instances reported below. Further, during the course of our audit, we did not come across any instance of audit trail feature being tampered with. Right, so this is one illustrative reporting where either partially it is not there with respect to like a fixed assets register or any such thing. A second nature of exception is where the audit trail feature is not operating effectively during the reporting period. So the illustrative wordings, the starting remains the same, except that the audit trail feature of YYY software used by the company to maintain payroll records did not operate throughout the year. So the first instance we saw when we were discussing about fixed assets that it did not have any audit trail feature at all, that software. Now, in this case, the software has an feature, but it was not operating throughout the year. So this is an exception report with respect to that. And in 2 itself, another illustrative example is, except that no audit trail enabled at the database level for accounting software, this, and BPB to log any direct data changes. So what happens is when we talk of a database level, that means at the back end of the software, there would always be a database. Now for making changes to that database, this is just an illustrative example that there is no audit trail enabled, which means anybody can go into the back end at the database level and log any direct changes to the existing data which is there. So at the database level, there are no controls which are expected, and hence this modified reporting. The third is the accounting software is maintained by third party, and the auditor is unable to assess whether audit trail feature can be disabled during the reporting period. So like we said that there are third party service providers, and as an auditor, if you are not able to assess whether this has been the audit trail feature has been disabled in the software, in such a case, this can be an illustrative form of reporting. Based on our examination, the company has used an accounting software so-and-so, which is operated by a third-party software service provider for maintaining its books of account, and in absence, we have to say what type of report. We are unable to comment whether audit trail feature of the said software was enabled and operated throughout the year for all the relevant transactions. So this is another type where in case of third-party software providers. The fourth example is where the audit trail has not been preserved by the company as per the statutory requirements for record retention. And so in that case, the opening paragraphs, or I would say the opening lines, would remain the same as we had under an unmodified reporting. The last sentence where you would mention that the audit trail has not been preserved by the company as per the statutory requirements for record retention. So this typically would come from second year and onwards. In the first year, there is no such requirement. So typically for financial year 23-24, the first year of reporting, this would not come because it's the first year and there would be nothing like a record retention. It would happen from year 2 onwards that this may be applicable. Fifth example is where there has been a migration from one software to another that has happened during the year, or a higher version of software has been installed and the auditor is unable to obtain sufficient and appropriate evidence. In that case, the modified reporting as per the illustration is that the company has migrated to whichever software it is from some old software or the manual books of account during the year and is in the process of establishing necessary controls and documentations regarding audit trail. Consequently, we are unable to comment on audit trail feature of the said software. So this would typically be a disclaimer of opinion that you would not be able to comment on the audit trail feature of the said software. Now, some special consideration in case of fraud scenarios. So as an auditor, you may come across a scenario where there has been a error or a fraud which could not be established because of the non or lack of availability of the audit trails. You could not establish that. So when you evaluate the severity of such deficiency in cases of fraud, you should primarily consider 2 factors. One is the likelihood that the deficiency will result in a material mistake, and the magnitude of such an outcome, or what we say as the materiality of such an item. So in this scenario, it would call for performing an assessment of risk of material misstatement, ROM, as we say, due to fraud, and you would need to consider both qualitative and quantitative factors to assess whether there is a deficiency or not. And this would require application of professional judgment. And again, this would be linked to 143.12, 11G, as well as clause 10 of the CARO 2020 reporting. Now, when we talk of 143.3.1, that is ICOFR, that means internal controls over financial reporting. 143.3.1, it requires that the auditors would state in the audit report whether the company has internal financial report with respect to the financial statements and also its operating effectiveness, for which there is a guidance note also which has been issued by the ICI. Now, this guidance note, it does not detail features or audit procedures with respect to 11G, because ICOFAR is something which is very old and 11G is something which is new. And accordingly, whether the audit trail feature has operated throughout the year or not. So if it has not been operated or enabled throughout the year, you might need to modify the comment while reporting under 11G while you are testing or examining with respect to ICOFAR also. So if that audit trail is not maintained or is not effective under 11G, you will also have to see under 143.3.1 whether there would be any implication with respect to your opinion on the ICOFAR. Written representation. So this again a very important part of our audit documentation. So from the management, like we discussed about the management responsibilities and their, I would say, confirmations, we will need to have a written representation on these aspects. So please include that in your MRL format for the next year. So it would contain acknowledgement of the management responsibility for establishing and maintaining adequate controls for identifying, maintaining, controlling, and monitoring of audit trails on a consistent basis. Also stating that the management has performed an evaluation and assessed the adequacy and effectiveness of the procedures to comply with this requirement. Also, the management's conclusion as set forth in its assessments about the adequacy and effectiveness. So they also need to confirm that the audit trail feature is being working effectively, and also that the management has disclosed to the auditor all deficiencies in the design or operations of control maintained for audit trails identified as part of the management evaluation. So this is part of the management representation. Also describing instances where identification of fraud, if any, resulting in a material misstatement to the company's financial statements is identified while reviewing and testing the samples with for disabling the audit trail facility of the accounting software, and stating whether control deficiencies identified and communicated to the audit committee, more so in the listed companies, in relation to audit trail during previous engagements have been resolved. This would be some of the audit management representation paragraphs which would need to be added going forward. And finally, coming to the audit documentation, we discussed many things during the course of this deliberation. But sufficient and appropriate record of basis for auditors reporting under 11G. You will have to document all these aspects and also the evidence that the audit was planned and performed as per the implementation guide, the applicable standards on auditing, and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. So you will have to comply with the SA 230 when it comes to audit documentation to the extent applicable. So friends, this was with respect to the audit trail that we had. That is the first section of the today's deliberation. There were questions that had been sent to me by Pramodji today morning. I have tried some of the aspects to get covered in the presentation itself, but anything has been missed out, or like Pramodji mentioned, that we'll have the Q&A with respect to the audit trail, and then we will go to the AQM. So
Yes, sir.
Pramodji, over to you.
So there are two queries in the chat box. First, we should resolve this thing. In the case of company making entries in positive with effective date relating to previous year, just depreciation provision entries. The trial balance of the previous year does not show the effective date entries in the previous year. How to match the trial balance? Actually, क्या सर 1 अप्रैल से तो हमको रखना पड़ रहा है ऑडिट ट्रेल के अंदर में, but since the accounts are finalized at the later date, there are many entries which are passed in the current year, but relating to previous year. So there will be some changes.
Yeah, so see, those changes can be there. So there is no harm. See, let me first tell you, there is no harm in making changes. See, ऐसा नहीं है कि आपका एडिट लॉग नील होना चाहिए. हमको वो रिपोर्ट नहीं करना है कि कंपनी का एडिट लॉग नील है कि नहीं. कंपनी का एडिट लॉग है और जो भी चेंजेस कंपनी कर रहे हैं वो ट्रैक हो सकता है, वो लॉग में आ रहा है. So like the question is, so I would like to mention two things over here. One thing is the date of the entry. So like it has been mentioned that definitely I also mentioned that 31st March tak to sab entries ho bhi nahi sakti hai. It would roll over to the next year till the financial statements are signed off. So that is possible, but you need to have the effective date and the date of entry. So both should now be captured in the software, the date of entry and the effective date or the voucher date, whatever you may say. That is one thing. Second thing is that, like आपने बताया प्रमोद जी, that depreciation 31st March का आज की entry डल रही है, dated 31st March. Now there has been some changes again to the block of assets with respect to PP. कुछ revenue से capitalize हुआ है last year में pursuant to audit, and that has made a change to the gross block of assets, moving forward. So, and which would have an impact of some rectification that would be carried out in FY 23-24, because FY 23-24 की entries हो गई है, and now because of which there, like I said, it is not a crime to pass rectification entries. What is required is uska log hona chahiye. So I don't see any difficulty. We should have all these things recorded as part of the audit log, especially for the changes with respect to the amounts or the entries being made for FY 23-24.
तो सर जहाँ पर सेम जैसे टैली के अंदर में एक साल से दूसरे साल के अंदर में हम कैरी फॉरवर्ड कर लेते बैलेंस को, तो वो करना उचित नहीं आपके हिसाब से? हमको वो जो चेंज हुए वो
इवन इन द, आप कोई भी ERP भी ले लीजिए, सी ERP में भी तो ऑटो कैरी फॉरवर्ड ही होता है. नोबडी नाउ सी वी डोंट एक्सपेक्ट कंपनीज, लार्ज कंपनीज, कि वो हर एक लेजर में जाके वो एंट्री ओपनिंग बैलेंस का करेंगे, राइट? दैट इज नॉट द वे इट वुड बी डन. So that rollover by any one software, I would say all softwares would always have this feature of a rollover, because account has to be on a regular basis. Accounts cannot be stopped because of finalization. ऐसा तो हो नहीं सकता कि मैं बैलेंस शीट साइन करूं बाद में 1 April की एंट्री स्टार्ट करूं. So that would always be there. I don't see that as a challenge.
सर इस चीज से संदर्भ मेरा एक क्वेश्चन आपसे कि सपोज कीजिए कि डेटर्स क्रेडिटर्स के अंदर में चेंजेस होते हैं, डेप्रिसिएशन में चेंज हुआ, बैंक इंटरेस्ट चेंज हुआ, देयर इज नथिंग टू वरी अबाउट दैट. बट इफ देयर इज अ सिग्निफिकेंट चेंज इन द कैश बैलेंस, जो कि ओरिजिनल जिस वक्त में अकाउंट्स के अंदर में कैरी फॉरवर्ड लिया गया है, एंड बाद के अंदर में पता चलता है देयर इज अ सिग्निफिकेंट चेंज इन द कैश बैलेंस ऑफ दैट, से लास्ट ईयर कैश बैलेंस एज ऑन 31st March was 1 crore, in the audited balance sheet it is 10 lakhs, so there is a 90 lakhs entry has been passed. So I think these will have a implication of what as income tax assessment is concerned and how the auditors have to report it.
So see, one thing is that yes, like we discussed, that you also have to see on the true and fair view with respect to the books of account, because there is books of accounts are to be maintained and recorded. I would not say on a daily basis, that is not the requirement, but just the example that you are taking, that means to what extent you would be comfortable as an auditor giving a clean report where these sort of entries are being missed out or are being changed or are being passed at a later date or whatever it might be. So even on the IFC, I would say there should be a qualification. And that is what, if you look at the guidance note on the IFC, it talks about such things about the accuracy, the completeness of the transactions and all those stuff. So see, like I said, that there is no bar of making changes. I would say everybody would make errors and you have to rectify that. But such changes you will have to see from an auditor's perspective, an independent auditor's perspective, that whether such books of account can give a true and fair.
Correct. Sir, there is one more query. Can a company record transaction on monthly basis?
Yeah, so a company, like I said, see cash and bank transactions on a monthly basis, but then what happens, how I would look at it is typically the entries would be coming from somewhere, right? I can't say that मेरे दिमाग में सब है और मैं पूरी month की entries कर रहा हूँ, right? So for a bank, you would have a bank statement on the basis of which you might be passing the entries. But for a cash, there would be a manual cash book or some sort of a thing. Now you will have to just see that when you are passing on a monthly basis, that record, that books of account or whatever, that would come under the definition of books of account or not. If yes, like we talked of the POS, sales का भी हमने वही बात की कि sales का regularly दिन में इनवॉइसेस आपके जनरेट हो रहे हैं, लेटर से 500, 600, 700 इनवॉइसेस जनरेट हो रहे हैं, आप उसका मंथली एक करते हो, तो देन दैट POS also becomes part of your books of account. Similarly, this cash and bank, for that also, whatever record you are maintaining, that would become part of your books of account, and you will also have to see that whether audit trail or edit log features have been enabled in that or not. If not, then again that will form part of your opinion.
बट इन दैट केस सर, जो कच्ची कैशबुक जो आपने बोले, जो कि पेटी कैशबुक या कच्ची कैशबुक हैंड रिटन लिखी जाती है, क्योंकि मंथ एंड में जाकर जो बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स की एंट्री हो रही है, इट मींस समवेयर इट हैज बीन रिकॉर्डेड, so that has been recorded in the Excel sheet or some other is not in other software. तो उसके लिए तो आपको भी लिखना पड़ेगा कि कच्चा कैशबुक has been maintained in the
not in the example. जैसे हमने वो illustrative examples लिए थे, उसमें you may mention that the cash book or a bank book, there is a manual record which is maintained for which this audit trail. So see, again, if it is manual, it's fine, but if it is Excel, then it becomes electronic, and then you will have to say that till the time it gets entered in the software which has an audit trail feature, there is no audit trail that is applicable with or maintained, not applicable, but there is no audit trail that is maintained as far as those Excel sheets and all are concerned.
ये चीज सर फिक्स्ड एसेट रजिस्टर में भी आती है, क्योंकि बहुत सी कंपनियां जो कि फिक्स्ड एसेट रजिस्टर जो एक्सेल शीट में मेंटेन करती है, एंड तो इसमें भी मुझे इसी तरह से रिकॉर्ड देना पड़ेगा कि दिस इज बीइंग मेंटेन्ड इन एन एक्सेल शीट व्हिच डज नॉट हैव द ऑडिट ट्रेल फैसिलिटी.
Correct. So that is what I'm saying. Then we'll have to mention that otherwise they have to start entering the data on a daily basis.
सर ये क्वेश्चन था जो आपने इसको डील तो किया है, लेकिन थोड़ा सा है कि इन केस एनी सॉफ्टवेयर बिलिंग सॉफ्टवेयर डज नॉट हैव एनी एडिट लॉग accounting audit trail, but again that software does not allow any kind of modification, deletion or in any kind of changes. Even then I think it does not fulfill the compliance of the law. So should we have to report it again in a modification report?
Yes, see, first of all, you will have to then get that tested, that software tested, that it is non-editable. The second thing kya hoga, Pravod ji, and to all the participants, like we said, even at a database level, we have to see. So maybe at the front end, I cannot do any editing and all, but at the back end, there would be a database. Then we will have to typically see, have an access or a testing of controls with respect to that also, whether wahan pe koi direct entry ho sakta hai kya. And we will have to get the necessary certificates, or say from the third party vendor, or get an IT expert on this, that who will give a confirmation. And again, the challenge would be for us as auditors that we have to report that it was operating effectively throughout the year and for all the transactions recorded during that period. So at the end of the year, that testing should be done about whether at a database level and all backend se kuch ho sakta hai, nahi ho sakta hai. Then if that is totally protected from all aspects, then you may consider that the edit log is there, or you may just would like to add that for this software it cannot be edited at all, which has been certified, just for a clarificatory purpose.
Sir, दूसरा क्वेश्चन हमारा कि अगर अकाउंटिंग सॉफ्टवेयर यूज्ड बाय द मैनेजमेंट गेट्स करप्टेड ड्यूरिंग द ईयर, और ये डेटाबेस करप्टेड हो जाते, कैन नॉट बी रिट्रीव्ड एंड द बुक्स हैज टू बी रीरिटन, पार्शियली रिटर्न और फुली रिटर्न, उस केस में मैनेजमेंट को क्या करना चाहिए, ऑडिटर की क्या रिस्पांसिबिलिटी है?
So from the management side, ultimately the primary responsibility of the management to give a true and fair view, I would say, of the financial statements, and to give the comfort to the auditors कि भाई ये data corrupt हो गया था, but उसके बावजूद भी जो भी restore हुआ है partially, fully, उसके बाद entry सारी हुई है. So again, going back to that, we will have to see with respect to the completeness of the entries that have been made in the restored software, or the restored accounting software, I would say. And if we do not have sufficient appropriate audit evidence to give a confirmation or give us the comfort on the proven value, then we will have to modify our opinion.
Again, sir, in case of the large companies, or where the accounting data have been ये तो आपने कर दिया कि जो outsource हुआ वहाँ पर we should get a report from the internal auditor या information system auditor or the outsource person के जो है, लेकिन case of the large companies where there are humorous voluminous data, उस केस में कैसे ऑडिटर का क्या अप्रोच होना चाहिए कि to ensure that the data has not been tampered, because in case of numerous it will be very difficult now.
Again, saying this is more so of a sample basis. अगर आपने देखा होगा हमने slide में भी दिया है कि आप हर एक transaction का तो नहीं. So first is to test the system that whether it is foolproof or not. What are the whether there is an excess, or like I said that with respect to the edit law, the excess itself should be blocked. It should not be allowed to anybody else. But if there is anything which is there, then you will have to do the sample testing that whatever are the changes, they are being recorded or not. So this is the procedure which is there. So it is more of a IT related thing rather than pure accounting. कि वे सब transactions record हो रहे हैं कि नहीं हो रहे हैं.
Sir, a question that if there is frequent modification in the entries or deletion of entries, उस केस में true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company, and खासकर जहां पर कुछ एंट्री ऐसी मिलती है जिसके अंदर में change in the profitability of the company, उस केस में हमारी रिपोर्टिंग जो है so far as true and fair view of the state of affairs of the company जो हम लिखते हैं, और दूसरी चीज जो IFC की जो रिपोर्टिंग होती है, इस दोनों के अंदर में इसका इम्पैक्ट आएगा काफी, मतलब आई थिंक दिस शुड बी द मेजर इम्पैक्ट फॉर हाउ द ऑडिटर हैज टू कंप्लाई विद दिस थिंग्स.
Yes, correct. So see, because if you find that there are a lot of rectification, a lot of entries that are being changed, and like you said that it impacts profitability also, then definitely your IFC giving a clean report now would become very difficult, because you have an audit trail and an audit log also, which shows these transactions and the impact that it has on a regular basis. And therefore, in such case, like I said, that you will have to get the comfort with respect to the completeness, accuracy, and all those features. And if required, you might have to give a modified opinion, even on not only on the financial statements, but also on the IFC in such situations.
Procedures, can the management do the backdated entry? जैसे मैं आज की डेट में एक मई की डेट का मैं कैश एंट्री करता हूँ, whether that is या हो सकता है 1 तारीख की डेट में जाकर मैं 1 तारीख की एंट्री करता हूँ मैं.
Yeah, so like I said, see, backdating entries, effective date you can definitely put. There is no restriction on that, because even आपके 31st March की entries भी जो सब होगी, वो तो अभी अप्रैल के बाद ही होगी काफी entries with respect to depreciation and all. Maybe you would be doing a reconciliation of GST or something of a TDS, and you will find that there are some entries of TDS which are not there, which you had shown as a TDS deducted, and there would be a lot of entries that would be happening. Which I would not say typically a backdate entry, but an entry which would be entered today having an effective date of a earlier date. So that is very much possible, but ultimately everything should be tracked in the edit law, and it should be available whenever required.
इसके अलावा सर आप मैंने जो 12 नंबर 13, 14, 15 4-5 क्वेरी भेजी है, ये सब आपने एडजस्ट कर दी अभी हमारे आपने डेलिब्रेशन में, जस्ट फॉर द मतलब जो वापस इसको जनरेट कर फॉर्म है. Cash sent to factory for payment of wages, no books at factory, payments made at the factory recorded at HO backdated. It can't be done if there is a proper backup with you, proper evidences are there with you. Factory is doing production and sales daily. Sales entry quantity is done when goods are sold every day, but consumption and production entries are done monthly. This can always be done provided you have a proper backup. It needs to be company having multiple retail chain of stores. Daily cash book is maintained in Excel sheet. However, recording of daily transaction accounting software is done after 7 to 10 days. Excel utility does not have any audit trail. This fact has to be reported in the audit report.
Yes, so see, all these things, like I mentioned, Excel is typically not having any audit trail. Now I would go a step ahead. Let us say Excel. It is I'm not saying completely protected, but it is all password protected and only person can do the entries. Nobody can make any changes if the Excel gets configured in that way. Then and whatever are the changes they get recorded. Just typically हमारा Word में होता है track change mode. Typically in Excel, if somebody is able to develop such a sort of a thing that where you are able to track all the changes that are being done, and it satisfies the requirement of the Rule 11G, I would say from the management side first, with respect to the account rules, then a very remote possibility, but even that can be said to have a proper audit trail.
That can be said. Not track changes, it can be said.
But again, you have to see who has access to that, wo track ho raha hai, nahi ho raha hai. Again, the controls over that. Like you would test for a software, you would maybe do more intense testing as far as this is concerned, that who has access, because see, to crack a password is very easy. Abhi aajkal to. So you will have to
Excel में तो
examine wo kahan pe store ho raha hai, who will have access to it, whether that can be cracked. So ultimately, all these things you will have to take into consideration before you give a clean report.
कुछ और क्वेरी अगर चैट बुक्स में है तो, या मेरे पास कुछ एक क्वेरी आई हुई है which I will ask you again now.
In case trail has been activated in the month of May, what is the consequence? The consequence is that you will have to report. जैसा हमने एक illustrative example देखा भी था, that it is not operating for the full part of the year. So you might have to say that with effect from this date, now it is operating, and then give your report, and the period earlier to that it was not there, and maybe you can mention that.
But in this case, penalty impose हो जाएगी कंपनी के ऊपर में. MCA can impose a penalty.
Yes, so that would be legal.
सर ऐसा भी तो हो सकता है पार्शियली हमारे बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट जो है मैनुअल में रखा गया और पार्शियली हमारे बुक्स ऑफ अकाउंट्स हैव बीन मेंटेन्ड इन द कंप्यूटराइज्ड सॉफ्टवेयर.
Yes, that is very much possible, and this factual statement you will have to bring it as part of your reporting.
सर एक हमारे पास में क्वेरी आई है, which measures may be taken if audit trail can be detected or changed at the level of the windows. I don't know what is meant by it. It is a data, they mean to say at the database level. तो वो तो कर नहीं सकते हैं database level पर.
फिर तो मतलब ही नहीं है ना, अगर हम डेटाबेस में बैक एंड में जाके चेंज कर ले एंड देन आपको तो फ्रंट एंड में पता ही नहीं चलेगा कि ये सारे चेंजेस हो गए, देन इफ दैट इज अवेलेबल देन द होल पर्पस गेट्स डिफीटेड.
एक क्वेरी है कि is it possible for a user to have two system accounts, one as a user, one as administrator or reviewer?
Two system
accounts. I don't know what is meant by this thing. I have asked the other person also, they will be able to tell me.
अगर वो है यहाँ पे they can unmute and
no, he's not here. I think what he means to say here is the different access rights. This is what I am using the system as an administrator, I am using as a user.
Yeah. So see, different access rights तो सभी ERP softwares में होते ही हैं, and that is where the whole maker checker thing comes in, because everybody would have a different access right, but ultimately you have to see that whosoever administrator हो या system operator हो या accountant हो, कोई भी हो, जो भी changes कर रहे हैं, that has to get recorded. It should not happen that the administrator has the right to disable the audit trail feature. Again, if that is there, then you will have to report, and that that this is editable, the audit trail feature. You will have to report as such in this situation. You can have different levels, but you have to ensure at no level this can be disabled.
सर ये सर जितने भी टैली के पैकेज या फिर दूसरे जो फैक्ट एंड बिजी सॉफ्टवेयर हैं, इन सब के अंदर में ऑडिट ट्रेल जो आती है वो इनेबल्ड ही रहती है, और दिस कैन नॉट बी डिसेबल्ड एट ऑल. दिस इज व्हाट दे आर सेइंग, दिस कैन नॉट बी डिसेबल्ड.
Tally, I think as well Tally is concerned, they have come out with a new version also, audit trail wala, and where maybe you can also have a demo of that for the benefit of members if you have not had so far, where they can come and show you how the audit trail feature now in the new version that they have activated that, and they would also show you from where you can see the logs and all of the changes that have been made.
So there is one more query, but I am not able to understand what the queries still want to know again. Is the audit trail review prior to release of each batch a regulatory requirement, or is it only recommended so far? Audit trail review prior to release of each batch means if there is some changes in the software, because software comes up with the modification and amendments and improvement ना. तो उसके लिए उसी मेरे को लगता है उसी से मतलब है. Is the audit trail review prior to
software modifications? You have to again see that whether under those software modifications anything has been done by which the audit trail feature can be disabled. See, there would be regular updates coming. आप समझो कोई law change हुआ तो law के basis पे आप changes करते हैं software वाले, and all those things would be part and parcel. There would always be upgrades, but whether under those upgrades you have to examine two things. One is that whatever was recorded till date as part of the edit log, that should not have been modified or deleted. That is first. And second is that going forward, there should not be any such disablement of audit trail, which would be possible in after that modification or upgrade of the software.
Correct. एक सब query इसमें आई हुई है. In case of accounts maintained by an external agency, particularly small and medium sized client, the auditor does not have the access to the audit trail. The audit reporting by the auditor is informative or a disclaimer?
In my view,
I
it
think
should be
this-
a disclaimer.
This should be the modified report.
Yeah. So in modified, we have three things. One is a qualified report, one is adverse report, and one is a disclaimer of report. So in this case, because you don't have access to anything to give you a confidence that with respect to the audit trail, I think what is required is that it has to be a disclaimer of opinion as far as the audit trail feature is concerned.
Sir, again, it's a very big task for the auditor will be to retest the edit log of accounts of earlier years. आज पिछले 7 साल की each and every year के accounts को निकालना करना ये बड़ा
इसमें क्या see again this is all tech based, but first year तो कुछ देखना नहीं है. Second year क्या होगा is that with respect to the audit log of the year 1, let us say 23-24, that would be that could be stored separately and उसका regular backup and वगैरह होगा. So you will also have to see that उसमें typically हमारे files में आता है ये date कब change हुआ है क्या है. So these are some of the things which you will have to examine, that what are whether first of all access है उसको किसी को. See, it should not happen that an audit log file आप जब open करोगे तो it is like a TXT file or a Word file, where you can make any changes and all those things. So even in that, the controls should be there, which again I had deliberated as part of my presentation, that feature should be such that it has to be watertight with full controls, and nobody can go and change make any changes with respect to that edit log. And if any changes are made, they should again get reflected immediately कि भाई ये जो log है वो change हुआ है पिछले सालों का.
एक सर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है जो मैं यहाँ पर हाईलाइट करना चाहूंगा कि नेक्स्ट ईयर से मार्च 24 से क्या बैकडेटेड बैलेंस शीट साइन करना पॉसिबल होगा, क्योंकि छोटी छोटी कंपनियों के अंदर में तो 1 साल बाद पता चलता है कि उन्होंने प्रोविजन फॉर टैक्सेशन की एंट्री नहीं की थी, डेफर्ड टैक्स की एंट्री नहीं की थी, और आज जब मैं करता हूँ तो जिस दिन मैं एंट्री कर रहा हूँ वो एडिट लॉग में आ जाता है. जैसे वो एडिट लॉग में आता है तो नेचुरली आई कैन नॉट डू द बैकडेटेड एंट्री बिकॉज इफ देयर इज एनी से ऑडिट बाय एनी इंक्वायरी फ्रॉम द आरओसी दे विल आस्क फॉर द एडिट लॉग. Any income tax assessment, they will first ask for the edit log. Any GST related issue, they will ask for the edit log. In fact, all the regulatory agencies will first ask for the edit log. There is a mismatch.
No, I agree. I respond. I would say that, see, if you look at your audit report, audit report may we say that the financial statement matches with the books of account.
Yes.
Right. So without all the entries being passed, as an auditor, how can you say that it matches with the books of account?
That is the thing which I want to tell you.
Correct.
So backdated sign karna will be suicidal for an auditor.
I would say that I would say मैं हमेशा जब भी कोई presentation ऐसा देता हूँ मैं बोलता हूँ members को, first things friends, आप जो audit report sign कर रहे हैं, please take a printout and read what you are signing. आप इतने सारे assertions देते हैं as part of your audit report, you don't realize that, and therefore it is very, very important that once you read what you are signing now, automatically a lot of processes you will start implementing as part of your audit itself. Because you are saying one important thing is that you have done your audit as per the standards on audit. Right? And now standards on audit require so many things, right? From the engagement letter, documentation and other things, right up to your MRS, which is the closing. Now, all these things are important, and आप बोल रहे हैं कि मैंने इसके भी, if you look at the NFRA orders, Pramod ji, I would go a step ahead. Even you should have meetings where somebody summarizes 3-4 NFRA orders, and you can have discussions on that. What are the findings? What are the expectations of the regulators? वो तो standard line by line standards on audit का implementation आपसे expect करते हैं. So when you talk of things where the dates do not match, I think that is out of question, because before you sign off, everything has to be there in the financial, I would say, system, get recorded.
छोटी कंपनियों के अंदर में थोड़ी सी दिक्कत होती है, लार्ज कंपनीज के अंदर में जहां पर आप लोग ऑडिट करते हैं वहां तो अनडाउटेडली एवरीथिंग हैज टू बी देयर, लेकिन फॉर स्मॉल एंड मीडियम साइज कंपनीज दिस काइंड ऑफ लीवे जो है ऑडिटर लेते ही हैं कि ठीक है सब कुछ रेगुलेटेड चल रहा है.
No, people will have to regularize. People will have to regularize, because see, I'll tell you, maybe I'm digressing a bit, but people will have to invest in compliance rather than into litigation.
सर किसने क्वेरी की थी, मैंने उसका रिप्लाई दिया था, बट इज नॉट एग्रीइंग विथ माय क्वेरी. विल रिप्लाई वेदर बैकडेटेड एंट्री आर पार्ट ऑफ ऑडिट लॉग. हमने कहा यस, मींस ऑडिट ट्रेल के अंदर में तो आ ही जाएगा इसका. So he is saying no, bhaiya, I don't think so.
Audit log. So there are two things. One is an entry log, and second is the audit trail or an edit log. Right. So typically, how I look at it is an edit log. मतलब आपने जो entries कर दी है, उसमें आप जो editing करते हो, that would form part of the edit log. So edit log would mean changes to the existing entry. समझिए आपने ledger name change किया है, या debit credit कुछ change किया, या amount change की. So that would be your edit log, or entries which you have made and then you have deleted. पूरा का पूरा entry delete कर दिया है. That would form part of your edit log. So this is what, in my view, would be an edit log.
Okay, sir. Thank you. You have covered all the queries which I have sent you, partly in your this graduation, and partly you have very elaborately explained the matters. And now you can proceed to, there are no further queries, and now think you can proceed to the other topic.
I think somebody has raised hand. कोई Samsung SMA146B ऐसा कुछ लिख के आ रहा है.
No, I think he is the one who had raised me the query, and I have replied.
भैया,
हाँ,
नहीं एक तो मेरे को वही इसी में थोड़ा क्लैरिफिकेशन चाहिए. जो सर बता रहे थे, मैं ये बोल रहा हूँ कि सपोज किसी ने सेल्स की एंट्री 30 तारीख तक की कर दी, और कैश जो है, कैश की एंट्री मान लीजिए 5 तारीख से करना चालू किए हैं, तो दो इट इज बैकडेटेड एंट्री, बट देयर इज नो ऑल्टरेशन इन द एंट्री. मैं यही बोलना चाह रहा हूं कि बैकडेटेड एंट्री इज समथिंग एल्स, बट ऑल्टरेशन इन द एंट्री इज समथिंग एल्स. So backdated entry are whether are they the backdated entry are the part and parcel of the edit log?
See, that is what I said abhi response mein, that my view is edit log would mean the changes that are being made to the entries, right? आपने 5 तारीख को कोई आपने 30 तारीख की एंट्री की, लेटर से 6 जून को आपने 31 मई की कोई एंट्री की.
Correct.
Right. So that would not form part of your edit log. But वो एंट्री को आप 7 तारीख को चेंज कर रहे हो,
हाँ,
so that would form part of your edit log.
अब मान लीजिए कि अकाउंटेंट एब्सेंट है, 15 दिन बाद आके एंट्री कर रहा है पीछे से जाके, तब तक किसी ने कोई एंट्री कर दी करंट डेट में, तो वो तो एडिट लॉग का पार्ट नहीं है.
हाँ नहीं, वो सिस्टम आपके एडिट लॉग में देगा भी नहीं. अगर आप कोई भी सिस्टम देखेंगे, सी अभी nowadays ERP systems which are good systems, वो सब कुछ कैप्चर करता है. आपका डेट ऑफ अप्रूवल क्या है, किसने अप्रूव किया है, ऑल द यूजर आईडी, पासवर्ड, नॉट पासवर्ड बट यूजर आईडीज एंड ऑल, और एम्प्लॉय आईडीज एंड ऑल, वो पूरा ट्रैक करता है कि एंट्री डेट भी क्या थी, राइट. बट देन when we talk of the audit trail and the edit log, so typically the date of the original entry, in my view, would not form part of that log. It is the edit log, and therefore, जो भी editing होगा उसमें, that would be the at this level, that is what would be generated.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you.
तो AQMM पर करें, प्रमोद जी. Yeah, hello. Screen visible है ना?
Yes, visible, sir.
Yeah, so this is a very short presentation, but I feel that this is also equally important for all of us who want to grow in the audit practice. So what is this AQMM, audit quality maturity model? So see, quality we all know is something which is most sought after. आज हम भी कुछ लेने जाते हैं या सर्विस लेने जाते हैं या प्रोडक्ट्स लेने जाते हैं, तो quality is something which we are all interested in, which applies also to the audit service. Now, quality is a very relative term. कि आप कैसे उसको define करें, कैसे evaluate करें. So what the CAQ, that is Center for Audit Quality Directorate, it was found by the ICI 3 years ago. They have come out with a model which evaluates the current maturity level with respect to audit for the firms. So as was mentioned in the opening remarks also, that it is an amalgamation of well-researched set of audit quality indicators. And आप क्या कर सकते हैं, you can rate where your firm stands presently, and then also have a mechanism that where you can improve on your rating. So this is what is the AQMM. Now it is mandatory for certain types of practice units or practice units auditing certain type of entities with effect from 1st April 2023. तो अभी mandatory किसके लिए है और हो गया है, I would say audit firms which are auditing the financial statements of a listed entity or a bank other than cooperative banks, multi-state cooperative banks, and firms which are doing bank branch audits, they would also not be covered presently under this, and insurance companies. So we have listed companies, banks and insurance companies. ये तीनों के balance sheets जो sign करती है, those audit firms are covered under the mandatory requirement with effect from 1st April 2023. अगर कोई नेटवर्क है, नेटवर्क में भी कोई फॉर्म फॉल होता है, तो उसमें if a network is doing any such audits, then they would also be applicable for this. Professional judgment is required, and you will also need to maintain documentation to justify your scoring. So ये पूरा scoring है arithmetical by which you can determine your level of the firm. So you need to self-evaluate. मतलब जो भी पूरा scoring sheet है, उसमें you will have to self-evaluate कि आप कितने marks खुद को दे रहे हैं. And then after your self-evaluation, आपका जब peer review होगा, तब peer reviewer would come, and as part, in addition to the peer review, they would also do the AQMM review. मतलब आपने जो marks दिए हैं खुद को, उसके सामने they would evaluate the marks that they feel are relevant. अगर हम देखेंगे तो टोटल 600 मार्क का है AQMM, Audit Quality Maturity Model. There are 3 sections to that. The first section is with respect to the practice management. Operations जिसमें 280 मार्क है. This covers a lot of things about SQC1, Standard on Quality Control 1. There is a second section on the HR management with respect to the policies and procedures which you have with respect to your employees, your human resource, उसके training and all those stuff. तो इसके 240 मार्क है इस section के. And section 3 is about practice management, strategic functional 80 marks. So this totals to 600 marks. ये 3 section का जो total है वो. Now there are subsections also. Section 1, there are 9 subsections. Section 2, there are 5 subsections, and section 3, there are 17 subsections. So 3 subsections, that means there are total 17 subsections over the 3 sections which are there. Now practice management वाला जो है section 1, उसमें क्या आता है broadly, where you are evaluated based on the availability and implementation of your practice manual. आपके review manuals, quality review manuals क्या है, audit tools आपके पास क्या है, monitoring resources क्या है, getting EQCR, that is engagement quality control review, जो listed companies के लिए mandatory है, where you would have a review partner and also an engagement quality control review partner. तो ये आपके फॉर्म में क्या mechanism है? Client sensitization, technology deployment, revenue and pricing policy. So these are the broad areas where these 280 marks are spread with respect to your practice management. On the human resource management, you would evaluate upon your conduct of resource planning and monitoring as per your policy, conducting employee training, developing programs, resource turnover, मतलब employees कितना छोड़ के जाते हैं, कितना turnover है, compensation management, whether you are adequately paying the employees or not, and also having the key performance indicators for performance evaluation. मतलब at the end of the year, आपका जो appraisal है, salary increase है, तो whether you are having KPIs for the performance evaluation or not. The third section is on practice management, strategic functional. So इसमें आपका आता है IT infrastructure, technology related आपके पास क्या infrastructure है, employees को जो आप provide करते हैं, and also evaluation that is done by other regulators like the QRBA, NFRA and all those things with respect to your services or your attached functions. So these are broadly the three sections under AQMM. Scoring pattern क्या है? तो आपके जो भी questions है, so either it is 0 or the full score, and the majority of the questions is like that. So let us say hypothetically that whether you have a independence policy, right? कि भाई client independence आप कैसे maintain करेंगे? So policy है या नहीं है? You cannot say कि भाई मेरे पास थोड़ा बहुत policy है. You know, it's either a 0 or full marks. So a lot of questions are like this, where either it is there or it is not there, and therefore you would have 0 or full marks. 12 clause ऐसे हैं where they are percentage based. मतलब इतना range bound है कि total minimum 0 है, let us say maximum 12 mark है, but then there are graded marks. इतना से इतना आपका अगर है तो you get 2 marks, इतना से इतना है you get 4 marks, इतना से इतना you have 8 marks. तो वैसे graded भी there are 12 clauses, only 12 clauses in this full AQMM that is there. In 2 clauses, there are scores are applied only if the parameter is applicable to firm, otherwise they are not considered for the evaluation of the firm. Out of the total clauses, that is 76 clauses है जो हमने देखे आगे में, there were 14 subsections and 76 clauses. 6 clauses carry negative marks, that is more so in the section C. So negative marks किसमें है? The number of statutory engagements reworked. That means there are filing errors, information insufficiency, wrong interpretation of provisions, जिसके लिए आपने rework कुछ किया हो, so then there are negative marks. The number of client disputes that you have other than the fees dispute. मतलब fees dispute we have presumed वो तो रहेगा ही, but in the AQMM any client dispute other than fee dispute and how they are addressed, तो उसमें भी negative marking है. Under section 2 there are no such negative marking के questions, and under section 3 there are a lot of questions where there are negative marking. मतलब अगर advisory दी है कोई C&AG ने to not allot work due to unsatisfactory performance. If C&AG has done that, then there is a negative marking. Government bodies, authorities ने performance evaluate करके आपको डीबार आपकी फॉर्म को डीबार के blacklist किया तो negative marking है. QRB का कुछ negative assessment आता है तो उसके लिए negative marking है, and any professional misconduct on part of the firm, then there is a negative marking. So these are the areas where there is a negative marking in the AQMM. अभी आपका रेटिंग क्या आएगा? See, what is important in this is that आपका जो peer reviewer rating करेगा, that rating, that level of the firm would be hosted on the peer review website. Now, why I'm saying this AQMM is important? Maybe today आप ऐसा सोच रहे होंगे कि भाई ये मेरे को applicable नहीं होता है, तो मेरे को ये क्यों अभी विशाल भाई का सुनने का इसका क्या मतलब है? जब applicable होगा तब होगा. Now, friends, I would just like to tell you why it is important for all of us to get started with AQMM is that maybe today you don't have the large clients, but what would happen if you have done AQMM and you are in the level 4 firm, which is the highest level. So level 1 is lowest, level 4 is the highest. So if you are there in the level 4 firm and it is hosted on the website, your firm name and the level of the firm. Tomorrow, let us say since everybody is from Calcutta, in Calcutta there is some company, maybe a large private company also, which is looking for a change in auditors, and they would go to the website and see कि भाई Calcutta में level 4 वाली कौन सी firm है, because I am quality conscious, and they might approach you for an audit engagement. So it becomes important. And another thing is that ये AQM में जो सारे questions है 600 marks के, it's not that in day one you would get 600 out of 600, because there are a lot of aspects which are relating to policies, procedures, their implementation, subsequent monitoring, which cannot happen overnight. तो आप आज अगर let us say कल आप बैठ के खुद का मार्किंग करेंगे, तो let us say hypothetically 600 में से आपके 200 मार्क आते हैं, and you are a level 1 firm, that is right at the bottom of the ladder. Now from level 1 you go to level 2, level 2 to level 3. It is a time consuming process. एक पूरा independent process है कि आप पहले policies, procedures set करेंगे, उसके बाद आप उसके related formats वगैरह करेंगे for implementation. Then you will have some monitoring mechanism, and then only you will be able to justify the marks with respect to that particular point. That means if you start today for improving the benchmarking or identifying the areas for improvement, maybe it might take you 2 years to come to a level 4 target that you would have. Now, how these levels are again determined? Level 1, it is like it is at a very nascent stage, एकदम preliminary है, उनके पास documentation requirements and all. It is at the lowest level, and scoring ऐसा होता है that it is up to 25% in each section. Which means कि आपके तीनों सेक्शन है, तीनों सेक्शन में 25% से कम है, then you are in level 1. Above 25 to 50% is that you would be level 2 अगर आपको तीनों में in each of the 3 sections you get 25 to 50%. अगर समझिए आपके एक सेक्शन में 50 है, दूसरे में 48 है, तीसरे में 13 है, so because you don't have in each of the 3 sections, you will become level 1, because the lowest is 13%, which fits in a level 1 form. So you need that percentage in each of the 3 sections that we said. Level 3 is 50% to 75% again in each of the 3 sections, and level 4 is 75% in each of the 3 sections. So let us say you improve on your HR, you improve on your other strategic aspect, और आपका 75 के ऊपर आता है. But on the practice management, you have still to develop certain policies, procedures, and all documentation requirements, QC1, and you are under 25 to 50% usme. So in spite of 2 sections, you be above 75, you will ultimately be categorized as a level 2 firm. And therefore, your improvement would be required in all the sections going up the ladder, not just only one. This we already discussed, that evaluation of level of the firm, it must evaluate itself under all the 3 sections to arrive at the level. If you get a lower score in any of the sections, the level of the firm goes down, as the firm is required to score equally well in all the 3 sections. Low score under the relevant clause depicts the deficient area which the firm needs to work upon, and you have to thrive to reach the highest, that is the level 4. We had a EQM level version 1.0, which was revised. There were 2 revisions that were carried out in that. One is with respect to the EQCR, Engagement Quality Review Partner. So earlier, what was mentioned in EQM, that EQCR is required for all assignments. The revised version 1.0, it says that only for listed companies it is required, the EQCR. And again, that question was merged with a document which has now been put as a separate question. Is there a document of time spent for review of all engagement? And with respect to practice credentials, that was earlier requirement was empanelment with RBI and C&AG, which has now been modified. If you are empaneled with RBI or C&AG, you would be able to score the requisite marks. So these are the 2 changes that have been made from the earlier version to the revised version. There is also an EQMM implementation guide which has been released by the CAQ. And this implementation guides, it gives an understanding of the requirements under the various parameters. It also gives a breakup of a score in an instance like under a particular subsection. It is as 1 point for having vision and mission and 3 points for implementation for same. So उसमें आप देखेंगे तो 4 points, but implementation guides gives the split of those points. Again, like scores under subsection 1.3 is awarded only if the implementation is full against a partial implementation. So friends, finally, like once again, I reiterate that why firms should start looking at AQMM evaluation, that it prepares you to become future ready. It assesses your current level of audit quality maturity. It helps in identifying focus areas or the improvement areas for you as a firm. It helps the firm to define the roadmap for attaining the higher level of competency. Like I said, that it might take 2 years, it might take 3 years, it might take just 6 months also, depending on what are the areas for improvement. And the level of the firm post review by peer or AQM reviewer is made available on the website of the ICI. And that is where you will get a lot of visibility, a lot of publicity, and maybe the chances of getting good quality assignments are also there. So that was with respect to AQMM that I wanted to share. And friends, one more thing I would like to share over here is that with respect to the CAQ, recently we have come out with a tool, and it's an Excel tool on how to determine materiality. Materiality we mention at a lot of places, risk of material misstatement, but how to actually determine materiality, that is something that a lot of firms are not able to do it. And at CAQ, we have recently released an Excel tool. In fact, we had done one in the month of March also during bank branch audits, where we had come out with an Excel tool. This is our second endeavor to help members implement the qualitative aspects or improve on the qualitative aspects. You can download this tool at CAQ page of the ICI. You type CAQ space ICI and it will take you to the CAQ website, and there you can give your details and download this Excel tool for materiality. It will be very, very helpful for firms in planning their engagements, for especially now for the 22-23 financial year audits that would start. So once again, I thank both the associations, the VBD BAG and VIP Circle, for giving me this opportunity to interact and share my thoughts on these two areas of Audit Trail and the AQMM. Thank you, and over to you.
I'm inviting queries from the participants, delegates here, if they have any query on this topic. तो मुझे नहीं लगता कि इसमें कोई क्वेरी आएगी आपके पास में, पर लेकिन ये चीज मैं अपनी तरफ से जरूर समझता हूँ कि नेक्स्ट जैसे जो ऑडिट करना लिस्टेड कंपनियों की, इन सब कंपनियों के लिए द ऑडिटर स्मॉल फर्म ऑडिट जो है, जिनके यहाँ पर कोई सिस्टम नहीं है और प्रॉपर बैकअप ऑफिस नहीं है, दे विल नॉट बी एबल टू डू द ऑडिट, बिकॉज आई थिंक ये जो AQMM बनाना है, ये बहुत हद तक एक थ्योरेटिकल भी है। जैसे इंडिपेंडेंस के ऊपर आपको हर जगह पॉलिसी मैटर बनानी है, देन उसका इम्प्लीमेंटेशन भी करना है, इट हैज टू बी वेल डॉक्यूमेंटेड। और सो पीयर रिव्यूअर अभी तक जो आते थे, देख दाख कर चले जाते ऊपर से, और देन टू गिव द क्लियर पीयर रिव्यू रिपोर्ट विल बी वेरी वेरी डिफिकल्ट टास्क। मतलब पीयर रिव्यू विल बी द रियल पीयर रिव्यू, नॉट द जमा खर्ची पीयर रिव्यू आफ्टरवर्ड्स।
And so see, that is why the AQMM is there, and what I mentioned is that ऐसा नहीं है कि भाई आप overnight champion बन जाएंगे. It is a process. And at CAQ also we are doing a lot of work to help members achieve higher levels with respect to the firm categorization. But ultimately, हम लोग बोलते हैं ना, like you can take the camel to the water, you can't force it to drink. तो ये AQMM model बनाया है, सब tools बना रहे हैं, but ultimately it is on an individual from a firm to ensure that they implement. Ultimately, if they want to get good quality audits, I think the future is AQMM, where you will be able to demonstrate your quality aspects with respect to the your firm.
सर साथ में जो ऑडिट ट्रेल का जो कंप्लायंस है, दिस शुड नॉट बी टेकन बाय द ऑडिटर्स लाइटली एट ऑल, कि 10 दिन अगर ऑडिट ट्रेल अगर किसी कारण से इंप्लीमेंट नहीं हुआ था, अकाउंट्स के अंदर में बाद से ऑडिट ट्रेल स्टार्ट हुआ मई महीने में, जून महीने में, all these facts should be reported, because if the auditor takes any chance कि ठीक है क्लाइंट को सेफगार्ड करने के लिए कर दें, तो ये बात जरूर है कि जिस तरह से ROC काम कर रहा है एंड जिस तरह से नाफड़ा काम कर रहा है, मोस्ट ऑफ द कंपनीज इन नेक्स्ट 5 years will be subject to scrutiny in one way or another, whether it is small firm and the big firm, and ROC will first ask for the audit trail. This is what they presume, that all these regulatory जो भी है they all will first ask for the audit trail to have anything else.
Yeah, I fully agree the way the regulator is moving. And why should we? There is a simple question that the government has given us a responsibility. The stakeholders have given us a responsibility to give a true and fair view. And whatever is there, actually, we must report on that. We should not think कि भाई ये client चला जाएगा, ये client क्या बोलेगा or any such thing. Whatever is our responsibility as professionals, we have to do that. Harsh ji ने एक question पूछा है with respect to AQM in the chat box. Don't you think that small firms by implementing AQM would be a costly affair? Harji, I would say don't think that I'm saying as a CAQ convener. I believe that when you actually have defined processes in your office, it actually improves your efficiency. By your, I mean the team, the firm's efficiency. Now, I tell you that एक simple है कि आपके पास एक template है, एक format है where you have the significant accounting policies का पूरा checklist है कि भाई आपको क्या policy revenue के लिए क्या देना है, इसके लिए क्या देना है, इसके लिए क्या देना है. Now, when you have this standardization, any person in your office, हमारे offices में employee turnover भी होता है, articles turnover भी होता है, change होता है. आप हर बार तो सबको सिखाने नहीं जा सकते. Now, if you have a document which a person can refer to, then people would understand कि भाई मेरे को यही लिखना है या ऐसे ही लिखना है. So these are small things like an accounting. I'm not marketing, but if you can go to my website, I have a website vishaldoshi.in where there are a lot of these formats, very simple formats, which are there. कि भाई accounting standards है तो उसका एक applicability के related है एक checklist कि for a client कौन से accounting standards for that year applicable है. And I'll tell you how to use it. In my office, how I use it is when a balance sheet comes up for review before any partner, तो वो जो checklist है कि भाई ये client में इस साल में इतने accounting standards applicable है, that is ticked off and signed by the person in charge who is responsible from my office and given to me. Now what happens in that process? वो जब टिक करता है उसको पता है आई नीड टू चेक कि ये स्टैंडर्ड एप्लीकेबल है तो इसके रिलेटेड अकाउंटिंग पॉलिसी का है, डिस्क्लोजर फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स में है या नहीं है. सो दैट पर्सन वुड थिंक फर्स्ट उसके रिलेटेड जो डिस्क्लोजर रिक्वायरमेंट्स है वेदर आई हैव कंप्लाइड और नॉट, एंड देन ओनली आई विल गिव इट टू द पार्टनर फॉर रिव्यू. So in this process, because of standardization, yes, you might have to invest 2 hours or maybe even 2 days to design a format. I would not say no, but once you implement it, the people in your office would ensure कि भाई हर्ष भाई आपको बैलेंस शीट देने के पहले मेरे को इतना करके देना, और बिफोर एंड बिकॉज आई गिव यू हर्ष भाई आई विल फर्स्ट डू द रिव्यू माई सेल्फ कि ये सब मैंने किया है कि नहीं, एंड देन पुट इट ऑन योर टेबल. सो यू कैन इमेजिन योर टाइम कितना सेव होगा. अदरवाइज नॉर्मली यू विल से कि भाई अरे ये नहीं दिया, यू गो बैक, यू डू दैट अगेन, यू कम बैक. दिस टू एंड फ्रो हैपेंस, ओवरऑल क्वालिटी सफर्स. So I believe that yes, there would be an initial investment cost, but over the long run, finally the efficiency, accuracy and quality would improve, which would be saving in a manner that you will not be able to quantify also. This is what is my response.
There is no further query from the house, and I will request there is one query. Although this is a continuous process of, it is not a query. Automation and checking should be done by a tool, but we just although this is a continuous process of automation, checking would be done by a tool, but we want to get your view that it would be making the professionals handicapped, and they would be more dependent on the tool. Anything cannot be channelized with the training of articles and documents evidence from the client. This should be also be this involved in this kind of delay, lapse of understanding.
Yeah, I think when you say, Pramod, if you permit, can I respond?
Sure, sir.
Yeah, so see, it is a continuous process of automation and checking would be done by a tool, but we want to get your view that would it making the professional, would it the tools can making a professional's handicap? राइट अभी मैं तो सिंपल बोलता हूँ कि हम लोग मैनुअल अकाउंट्स लिखते थे. मैंने जब आर्टिकलशिप किया, प्रमोदा आपने किया होगा, बहुत जन ने किया होगा, तब वो खाता वही और वही सब चलता था. And let me tell you for the benefit of members that I am born and brought up in Calcutta. I have done my articleship in Calcutta. I have done my studies from Calcutta, even my CA from EIRC. And at that point in time, we had the manual books of account. Today, you have softwares, you have ERP and all those things. Now, does that make an auditor handicapped? I don't think so. It improves the accuracy. It improves the completeness of recording of the transactions. Errors and omissions gets reduced. And ultimately, from an audit firm perspective, when I say that when I use some professional tools, आज आप Excel में भी काफी formula और depreciation सब कुछ डाल के आप evaluate करते हो. You do a copy paste or drag drop and a lot of things you do, which are ultimately all tools in Excel itself. But that does not make you handicapped. That gives you an efficiency and accuracy also at the same time. And everything cannot be channelized with the training of articles and document evidence from the client. I could not understand this, Harji, that everything cannot be channelized with the training of articles and documents. Because I would say that documentation is something which is mandatory requirement under the standards on audit. In fact, we should all follow a principle that whatever is not documented is equal to not done. You know, and if you read the NFRA orders that are coming, they stress only and only on documentation. And that is why I requested Pramodji that if you can have some awareness with respect to some of the orders, may not be all, but आप 2-3 order लीजिए तो you will understand the importance that they are giving to the audit documentation.
Sir, we are going to have a seminar, physical seminar on 23rd of June, and we will be having discussing some of the NAFRA judgments in that. Because we have ये तो आती रहती है WhatsApp news के अंदर आती रहती है, but then the impact has to be understood. So
Yes,
we are
yes.
planning to have one seminar on this thing.
नहीं करना ही चाहिए.
So now there is no query, and
Sure.
from the core of my heart, sir, so thank you for the lovely discussion and very detailed discussion. And now I will request CEO Ansul Bhania to have to give the proper vote of thanks. Over to Ansul. Unmute yourself. Ansul.
Thank you, CA Pramod Mundraji, for giving me an opportunity to give formal vote of thanks. I, CA Ansul Bhuania, on behalf of VIP Road Chartered Accountant Associations and BBT Park Professional Association, thank you, CA Vishal Joshi, sir, who again I like to inform that he is the Vice Chairman of Auditing and Standard of Central Council, and for giving a wonderful session on audit trail and audit quality. Also, thank you all the members of the institute who has attended the brainstorming session. Thank you all. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mundraji. Thank you all the members of the institute. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Can
you
we
very
just
much.
vote of thanks with a huge round of applause for sir? Because I was after him since last 1.5 months, and I wanted to listen to him only. I am, sir, let me tell you, I have not done any contacted any other person other than you. In fact, this is the first one मैं सुन रहा हूँ एक इसके ऊपर में ऑडिट ट्रेल के ऊपर में है पूरा सेमिनार, एंड बहुत ही अच्छा लगा. एंड बेस्ट पार्ट है कि आपने पूरा इंटरेक्टिव बना के इसको सारी चीजों को सॉल्व आउट किया इसके अंदर.
Thank you. Thanks. It's always a pleasure interacting with
you are
our
looking
friends.
after for some more sessions on Zoom only. Can't help do it now physical, because physical के अंदर में तो अभी इंस्टीट्यूट ने मना कर दिया ना, सीपी प्रोग्राम हो नहीं सकता है जूम के ऊपर में.
हाँ, correct.
So that becomes a bit difficult.
Right.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you,
Wishing
sir.
everybody a good evening ahead. Yeah. Bye.